September 29th, 1998. The day Leon and Claire arrived in Raccoon City, unaware of what occurred days prior. The T-virus, a mutagenic toxin, had ravaged this small Midwestern town of 100,000 people, turning it into a war zone against the undead. But that wasn't the only virus that had leaked. No, there was a man, a monster, roaming around the police precinct with a strain of virus in him that T could never contend with. An unfinished virus that would cause the world to forever be under threat of new and improved viral weapons. What was it? Who had it? Well, it was a creation from none other than William Birkin. Dr. William Birkin, an Umbrella virologist that worked with the Umbrella for 21 years. Being employed by the age of 15 in 1977, he was one of the leading researchers of the Tyrant virus, along with his friend and colleague Albert Wesker. He was a talented researcher, full of ambition, and was responsible for feats such as a T-virus strain that reduced brain damage, increasing the virus's infectability, and discovering a new virus strain in the Arclay Laboratories test subject, Lisa Trevor, one that seemingly went undiscovered since the 1960s. This virus was found purely by chance, as it was only discovered when they injected Lisa with the Nemesis parasite. Upon being administered, she absorbed this parasite into her system, its DNA splicing with hers. An isolated progenitor strain was then extracted from her. Oswald Spencer gave Birkin the go-ahead to continue research on this strain, and he then proceeded to develop one of the world's deadliest viruses. One that is arguably one of the franchise's most powerful and dangerous viruses even to this day. The G virus. William Birkin's magnum opus, his creation, his life's work. This virus, although related somewhat to T, was a strain unlike anything Umbrella had seen at that point. Those infected with the virus would go on to mutate exponentially, becoming mutants that barely resembled the host. They were incredibly dangerous and were nearly invincible, as any damaged tissue was replaced shortly after. However, G never had a chance for any practical applications. The G virus was never finished due to Dr. Birkin's betrayal of Umbrella and eventual death. However, G lives on, with samples still being out in the wild and also being used as a base for other dangerous viruses. And if an outbreak of G was to ever occur, it would be a catastrophic event that could very well be the beginning of the end. Yeah, right. An outbreak would do that, sure, I hear you say. The virus mutates things. What's so dangerous about that? Well, let's start with its effects then. Upon injection, the G virus starts creating G cells, which spread in the host like a cancer. As the infection spreads, the host grows exponentially. It will mutate new additional eyes, most commonly on the shoulder, and its height will be similar to that of a tyrant. Eventually, the host will be a hulking mass of flesh and bone that may or may not have a claw, with their eye set out to kill and breed. Oh yes, you heard that correctly. G mutants have the ability to create offspring through embryos, and if implanted into an individual with related DNA, the embryo will implant itself and start to spread the virus. After an unspecified period of time, the implanted host will become a second-generation G mutant. Fortunately, this has never happened, so we don't actually know how dangerous these ones can be. Maybe they'd be more refined, maybe they'd be more deformed. We'll never know. What we do know, however, is that if an implanted host isn't related to the mutant, the embryo will reject its new home and burst out of the body as a G larvae, where it will then scurry away to become a G adult. It's shown in the originals that these larvae grow at an alarming rate, becoming adults in mere minutes. These disgusting abominations are strong and resilient, however, they lack the positive effects of the G virus, such as the ability to regenerate, and as such are classified as failures. They also cannot continue the G lineage, as whilst they can spew out G larvae to attack victims, these larvae cannot grow past this stage, and as such, cannot continue the bloodline. I mentioned prior that the G mutants have the ability to regenerate. Yes, just like the tyrants, these G mutants have gained the ability to undergo the V-Act process. With this, they are able to mutate and regenerate after damage. There's a catch though. Whereas T-virus monsters can only go through the V-Act process once, G mutants will undergo the process indefinitely. That means that every time they are damaged, they will heal and they will mutate. This spreads the G cells even further and faster, and eventually the G cells will consume every last original cell in the body, effectively taking over the host. The resulting form will be their completed form. Birkin's G3 form is considered his completion. But he has forms after that, doesn't he? Well, these forms, as we see through gameplay, are due to V-Act. Whilst the G mutant will eventually become complete, that doesn't mean that V-Act stops. Further damage will result in the healing and mutations compromising the G, resulting in abominations that are far from ideal. It can get so bad that the creature becomes a shapeless blob of flesh and death, as seen with Birkin's G5 mutation. The G virus also has the one ability that the T virus is often misinterpreted to have. It can reanimate the dead. Now, this unfortunately is never seen in-game, but it is detailed in cut content in both Outbreak and Resident Evil 4 development files. When injected into a corpse, the corpse will become a G-zombie. These things are basically just reanimated corpses that attack the living, and they cannot reproduce. It isn't known whether or not they can infect others, but it's absolutely horrifying that this virus can bring the literal dead back to life even long after death. Alright, so, the G has flaws. They eventually mutate too much, and if not related via DNA, they can't create successful G offspring. Plus, the G virus can't spread through bites or saliva, so that limits its spread too. So, how would an outbreak be bad if an outbreak is that limited? Well, let's start with how one could happen. So far, the only way we've seen a successful G creature was through direct injection. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that someone in a town was infected that way. So, we only have one mutant roaming about. Even with just one, the town would still be in trouble. The G mutant's first instinct would be to hunt down relatives, and it would kill/implant anyone standing in its way. If it gets damaged, if it gets shot, if it gets stabbed, run over, it doesn't matter. As we already know, it will just mutate to heal. By the time it gets to its family, it will have created countless G adults due to their quick growth, who will by this stage be spewing out G larvae to attack people. It will then implant family members with embryos, and within hours these family members will be second generation G mutants. Now there's more G mutants who will then go on to sick relatives who cannot die from small arms fire, and if damaged enough over a period of time, become huge lumps of biomass that consume all that's in their path. Within days the town will be in turmoil, and within weeks the town will be gone. The only solution I see here is either calling in the army with tanks or dropping bombs on the town. These G mutants will either need to be blown into pieces or completely incinerated. That's just from one G mutant. Granted, there are other factors as well, such as whether or not the BSAA can get there in a timely manner, or whether the town's residents are armed themselves. But even then, I believe that by the time the BSAA or TerraSave rolls out, it'll be far too late, and there'll be too many Gs to deal with. But okay, maybe they can get there in time, deal with the G mutant, and all is well. What if the G virus infected the water supply? Now, this never happens in the game. The only infections we ever see is via direct injection. But the T virus was in the Raccoon City water supply, and look what happened there. So if the G virus was in the water supply instead, Raccoon City would have had G mutants roaming about instead of zombies. A town of 100,000 people being indestructible killing machines. You see the issue of a G virus outbreak now, right? It would be a zombie apocalypse, but instead of being shambling husks that can be downed at a moment's notice, it's instead beings that will continue to heal, continue to mutate, killing all they come across and implanting embryos to increase their numbers. It would become a situation that couldn't be salvaged. Towns would fall, and without military intervention, the G mutants would spread. I don't want to over-exaggerate, but I wouldn't be surprised if entire countries fell. Well then, good thing the G virus died with Birkin then, right? Right? Well, unfortunately no. In the early hours of September 30th, USS Agent Hunk successfully exfiltrated Raccoon City with a G virus sample. Not only that, but Ada Wong had managed to obtain a tissue sample from William Birkin at some point during the Raccoon City outbreak. And then we have Sherry, William's daughter, who was infected by her father but ultimately cured due to the devil vaccine. The G cells in her body remain, however, and give her mild mutations such as her ability to heal. The G virus is also used one more time in canon, this time by Curtis Miller. This incident was used to show the destructive capabilities of the G virus, in the hopes to sell it off to potential buyers. Curtis, however, was under the impression that he was being tasked with showing the world that what happened in Raccoon City. Unfortunately, he was ultimately just being used. G was also used to create 3 other viruses in the Resident Evil universe. The first being the T plus G virus, which, as the name suggests, was a combination of both T and G. Another virus, the C virus, developed by Derek Simmons, had both T Veronica and G genes in its genome. And then there was Ouroboros, which used the G and T Veronica virus as a reference and was created by Albert Wesker. So even in death, William's creation lives on, being used as a base for other outbreaks to occur. Would he have been proud? Maybe. I'm not quite sure he ever wanted the world to become one where you couldn't go outside without being subjected to a BOW, but then again, we don't see enough of him to ever know for sure. So the G virus has had a gigantic impact on the world of Resident Evil. Despite only being in one game and having only 2 known instances of ever being used, its legacy will never die. The work Dr. Birkin did all those years ago, although unfinished, paved the way for more outbreaks and bioterror. Even isolated to its own incident, the implication that this virus has if an outbreak on the scale of Raccoon City was to ever occur sends shivers down my spine. Good thing an outbreak never occurred, right? So that was my video. I hope you enjoyed. The next section now is going to be unscripted. But basically, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who watches my videos. Since I came back like 4 weeks ago, with the Resident Evil Remake video, I had no idea that like anyone was going to watch my stuff. I'm just putting it out, what I like, you know, and the fact that people watch it and the fact that they like it and all that and the fact there's conversations in the comments and stuff. It's amazing. And I'm glad you're all enjoying it. And it really, you know, puts my ass in the gear to actually make more stuff. So, yeah. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time. Eventually, the host will be a hulking mass of flesh and bone. Eventually, the host will be a mulk. What the fuck? He obtained a sample from Frederick Downing, one of Birkin's firma